Hey everyone, it's triplemangothreat, and today we're going over the Elf tribal deck. The upgrades I'll be making is more card draw and more ways to untap our elves, so let's jump right into it. Our commander is Lathril, Blade of the Elves. For 2 a black and a green, we get a 2/3 elf noble. Lathril has menace, and whenever Lathril deals combat damage to a player, we get that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. We can also tap Lathril and tap 10 other untapped elves we control, so altogether 11, including Lathril. Each opponent loses 10 life, and we gain 10 life. Moving on to the stats of the deck, we have 12 ramp, 7 card draw, 10 removal, and 1 board wipe. Normally, we're going to be looking for 10 ramp, 10 card draw, 5 removal, and 3 to 5 board wipes. And you can see that ramp and removal are way over the usual amount recommended. With some more stats, we have 36 elves, 6 token makers, 5 graveyard interaction, 1 win con, and 37 lands. This deck really wants to have a lot of graveyard interaction, and I removed some of that, so let's talk about some of the cards to remove. Binding the Old Gods for 2 black and green. It's an enchantment saga, so each turn something new is going to happen. So the turn it comes in, we're going to destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. So that was part of the removal in the deck, and I had to remove the removal because there was too much. And the next turn, we get to search for a forest card in our library we could put on the battlefield tapped. And then the next turn, before it gets destroyed, creatures we control get Death Touch until end of turn. I didn't see this fitting because we had too much removal anyways. There's a lot of ramp in the deck, and that's already the first 2 turns, so I thought this was one we could take out. Bounty of Skemfar for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to reveal the top 6 cards of our library. We can put a land on the battlefield tapped, and we can also grab an elf from there and put it into our hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I personally don't like cards that make you look at the top however many cards and you gotta pick something from it, because a lot of times I'm missing a lot of cards. I'd rather just draw cards instead of filter through what I can grab. Elderfang Ritualist for 2 and a black. It's a 3/1 elf cleric. When it dies, return another target elf card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, there's a lot of elves in this deck, so that's great, but I didn't want to go with the graveyard interaction that this deck is trying to do. I'd rather make as many elves as possible and draw a lot of cards, and this wasn't a part of that. Elvish Rejuvenator for 2 and a green. It's a 1/1 elf druid. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to look at the top 5. We can put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped and put the rest on the bottom of our library in a random order. Again, just like Bounty of Skemfar, I don't like looking at the top X cards of my library and picking something from it. Jagged Scar Archers for 1 green. It has a star for its power and toughness. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of elves you control. And then we can tap it. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature with flying. This is another one of those removal cards, and I wanted to bring that number down a bit. And this is very specific with it having to be a creature with flying. It isn't going to be very useful if that creature has hexproof, so I wanted to remove this one. Lysalana Scarblade for 2 and a black. It's a 1/1 elf assassin. We can tap it, discard an elf card. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of elves you control. This is really good when we have a lot of elves, which this deck does just fine, but it's also making us pitch an elf into our graveyard. I'm not interested in that, and it's a part of that removal that we're getting rid of. Pride of the Perfect for 3 and a black. It's an enchantment that makes our elves get +2/+0. The deck already does great with buffing our creatures with cards like Dwindling Guiltleaf Dane, Elvish Archdruid, and Canopy Tactician. And their elves, unlike this, it's an enchantment, so I thought it was an easy one to remove. Roots of Wisdom for 1 and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to mill 3 and then return a land or an elf card from a graveyard to our hand. If you can't, draw a card. I think there's better cards than this that we could be using. And again, it's trying to fill our graveyard, which is not what I'm trying to do. Serpent Souljar for 2 and a black. It's an artifact. Whenever an elf you control dies, exile it. Tap it, pay 2 life. Until end of turn, you may cast a creature spell from among cards exiled with Serpent Souljar. We can only do this once per turn, so I was a little bummed about that. And the worst part is, if our opponent gets rid of Serpent Souljar, we lose this ability, so our elves are exiled when they die. So I had to get rid of that one. The last one is Turgid's Shadow for 3 black. It's an instant. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And it has Foretell for 2 and 2 black. Having each player sacrifice 2 creatures is fine, but it's not any good whenever our opponents have a lot of creatures that they can just sack and it doesn't hurt them any. So I'd rather have removal that said destroy target creature rather than have them sacrifice 2 random creatures. Cards I want to add to this deck are Elvish Dreadlord for 3 black. It's a 3/3 zombie elf with Death Touch. When it dies, non-elf creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn, and it has Encore for 5 and 2 black, which means we can pay 5 and 2 black. We're going to exile it from our graveyard. For each opponent, let's say we have 3, we're going to create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn if able. they gain haste, and we sack it at the beginning of the next end step. We can only activate it as a sorcery. This is really great. If we have 3 opponents, that's every non-elf creature getting -9/-9 for 7 mana. This is great. And it only had 1 board wipe in the deck, so now it's going to have 2 with Elvish Dreadlord. Harmonize for 2 and 2 green. It's a sorcery. We get to draw 3 cards. In my opinion, this deck needs a lot more card draw. We have a lot of cheap spells, and we're going to lose gas really quickly, so Harmonize is going to help us get more cards. Knight's Whisper for 1 and a black. It's a sorcery. You draw 2 and lose 2. More card draw is going to help us get better cards. Quest for Renewal for 1 and a green. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control becomes tapped, you may put a quest counter on Quest for Renewal. Well, this deck loves to tap our creatures. Let's continue. As long as there are 4 or more quest counters on Quest for Renewal, untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. That means our commander's untapped as well, and all of our elves, so we can have each opponent lose 10 and we gain 10. Every untap step. This is an amazing card, and I really wanted to go with the untap theme our commander promoted. Read the Bones for 2 and a black. It's a sorcery. We scry 2, draw 2, and lose 2 life. Scrying is going to really help us. We can see if we actually want the top 2 cards, and then if we don't, we can always put them on the bottom, and then draw 2 and lose 2 life. Seedboard Muse for 3 green. This is like Quest for Renewal, except we don't have to meet that counter restriction. We can untap all permanents, not just our creatures, so that means our lands as well, so we can cast instants if we need to. This is just a great untapping card that we can be using. Shamanic Revelation for 3 and 2 green. It's a sorcery. Draw a card for each creature you control, and it has Ferocious. We can gain 4 life if our creatures happen to have power 4 or greater, which is not what we're worried about. We're worried about drawing a card for each creature we control. If we have 10 creatures, we're drawing 10 cards for 5 mana. That's great. Sign in Blood for 2 black. It's a sorcery. Target player draws 2 and loses 2. We're most likely going to target ourselves, drawing the cards, and losing the 2 life. Skull Clamp for 1 colorless. It's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. When equipped creature is put into the graveyard or when it dies, we're going to draw 2, and its equipped cost is 1 mana. This is such a great card, and the reason why I say that is because most of our elves are 1/1s. So when we equip this for 1 mana, we draw 2 cards because our elves are dying. And this can be our tokens that we're making with our commander when we deal combat damage with her. So this is a very powerful card that's going to help us draw even more cards. And last, I want to talk about ways to protect our commander with Swiftfoot Boots for 2 colorless. It's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste, so that means we're going to be able to swing with her earlier if we have the mana. And equip cost is only 1 mana. Giving our commander hexproof is really important because with her out on the battlefield, our opponents are most likely going to be targeting her and destroying her as soon as possible. With Swiftfoot Boots, the only way they're going to be able to get rid of her is if they either destroy our boots and then take care of her, or if they do a board wipe. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out my other Precon upgrade video where I talk about the white and blue Foretell deck. Comment below what you think of these upgrades, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.